So you've just changed the orientation of the scope. I hope everybody can see, and if not, please, Caroline, can you modify it on the image of the room, Lynn's right hand, and how she's moving the scope around. So if that's the case, Lynn's just talking the scope to the left and right, trying to find the right position.
So firstly, Lynn's doing a beautiful demonstration of what we call a pivot technique, which we'll deconstruct later. But to answer your question, Roland, and I did a case with Luke this morning where we discussed whether we take the more difficult side of the lesion first. And in my own mind, I think you have to be able to resect the most difficult bit. So people often start with that because if they can't resect it, there's no point in going on with the rest of the resection. So that's a strategy to think about. But often you can make the more difficult bit easier by dissecting some of the other polyp away, and it flattens the plane. The snap is what you don't want to hear. So what you want to do is you want to exert consistent and gradual pressure on the snare and allow the diathermy energy to cut through the tissue via the snare. So what you're doing is you're causing the transection of the polyp by two mechanisms. One is a little bit of mechanical shearing force, but actually what the diathermy does is it cuts through the tissue, it seals the vessels at the same time, and you end up with this bloodless field.
So John will recognize, looking at this, like I do, that this is difficult. What about it's difficult?
So you don't have anything to stabilize the...
Well, one, it's too distended. Two, you have it's face on. So anything face on is actually quite difficult to treat. And when we're doing ESD, it's much more stable in retro, or where it's not completely on fast. So I think that's important to assess. And yeah, it is moving a little bit, isn't it? So too distended, on fast, and yeah, that's why I'm saying select the margin at the back where you can lean the snare on the margin and come around, and it's going to be much easier. And then we end up with this accuracy. Sorry, Christoph, for the beautiful image of you. But I think it was at the end. So 67% with 12 correct hits and 6 incorrect hits. The nurse was disagreeing with my assessment of incorrect and correct at one point. And you had 0.09 correct hits per second. So we think that this is a nice, we are currently studying whether this is a nice surrogate for tip control, but this would sort of disagree with Roland that your tip control is terrible because, well, I don't think he said terrible, not fair that he said terrible, that he said your tip control was a little bit flopping around all over the place. But if you look at this, in a difficult situation, I don't think that's a bad result. And therefore, I don't think that there's bad tip control. So I'd like to summarize by thanking you for being, for having the guts, I would say, to participate in something like this. It's not easy to put yourself completely on show, especially as you know when it's me. But well done. I thought it was very good. And I thought that you tackled a very difficult polyp in a controlled and measured way. So thanks very much for being part of it.